radio station.
Sarah is 64 and loves to garden. Recently, her health insurance ran out, leaving her worried about more than just weeds. She called the Elder Helpline and spoke with a volunteer Shine counselor about her options. There, she received free, unbiased counseling on health insurance for those on Medicare. For more information or to volunteer, call 1-800-963-5337 or go to floridashine.org.
Marcus Scott Impact Realty Tampa Bay is on the air saluting the brave men and women of our U.S. military. This proud salute is brought to you by Marcus Scott Impact Realty Tampa Bay. Give them a call today at 724-219-1604. That's 724-219-1604. That's Marcus Scott Impact Realty Tampa Bay, proudly saluting our troops, veterans, and first responders, professionals, and people who care.
It's been called shell shock, war neurosis, and battle fatigue. Today, we call it post-traumatic stress disorder, and it affects 1 out of every 5 warriors returning from battle in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Wounded Warrior Project offers comfort and support for warriors with PTSD and all other scars of war, whether those scars are visible or hidden. Find out how to help, because for warriors, the greatest casualty is being forgotten. Please visit woundedwarriorproject.org.
Windshields are all about safety, and so is Auto Glass America, especially now during the COVID-19 pandemic and social distancing. If your windshield is chipped or cracked and you have qualifying insurance, we'll install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. As always, we'll come to you with free mobile service while maintaining social distancing, plus you'll get up to $150 cash back for your windshield. Keep your family safe. Call us today, 813-96-GLASS. That's 813-96-GLASS.
New guidelines show it's relatively safe for women with epilepsy to become pregnant, but caution must be taken. The guidelines from the American Academy of Neurology and American Epilepsy Society recommend that women with epilepsy avoid taking the seizure drug valproate during pregnancy, since the drug can cause birth defects. Overall, though, these guidelines should be very reassuring, since they show epilepsy does not substantially increase a woman's risk of having a cesarean section or premature labor. For more information on these guidelines, visit thebrainmatters.org.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, David Gornoski, your neighbor, here to cast out all that negativity, all those little anxieties, by just following the truth, guided by the pursuit of beauty, and working together neighbor to neighbor, not relying on toxic groupthink, not relying on political tribalism. Those things cloud our judgment. And so today, on this Good Friday, we're going to talk about how to get back to work. That's the theme for today's program. Happy to be with you as always. And we're going to kick things off. We've got a lot of guests today, a lot of exciting topics to go through. But the theme is, how do we get to work? And one of the things that's foundational that made America one of the most prosperous nations in the world was our manufacturing backbone, being able to make things. There was recently, a few years ago, there was that Chrysler ad, made in America, made in Detroit. That was very powerful because of how it kind of resonated with that mythos of America. And in today's society, we've shifted a lot of our focus to things like the world of bits, which are important, information. And we've shifted our focus to things like service and things like that. That's fine. A lot of paper pushing jobs in the bureaucratic world of the America we have today in 2020. But one of the most foundational things, the thing that gets things going in terms of real wealth generation, is making things. And so to do that, we're going to go to someone who's involved with a lot of that. He's the president and CEO of Associated Industries of Florida, Tom Feeney. How you doing?
David, it's great to be with you today, and happy Good Friday and happy Passover, and congratulations, America, like we've always done. We'll get through this crisis.
Yeah, and I wanted to have someone on because we have our program. We reach across I-4 corridor from Tampa Bay to Orlando and the Space Coast and everywhere in between. But and we wanted to kind of touch on what is going on with Florida manufacturers. This is something that a lot of folks are concerned about, shortages and things that people need, critical supplies. There's been some headlines on news outlets saying there's a shortage of meat, because of some people getting sick and so forth. Tell me about what's going on from what you see in your perch here in Florida.
Well, Associated Industries of Florida, people can go to AIF.com, is the state manufacturing association that is partners with the National Association of Manufacturers. And manufacturers across the country are being dealt with differently state by state. Effectively, some states like Pennsylvania have shut down all manufacturers, and the governor had no clue the ramifications of what the impact would be. For example, unless you were specifically exempted as a critical infrastructure and named in the Pennsylvania governor's executive order, you were shut down. One of the companies shut down is one of the largest manufacturers of wood pallets. Guess what Clorox cleaning ship gets sent in throughout the country to help us keep our hands clean? So the manufacturing supply chain is critical. After World War II, America, I think rightly, helped build up Japan, and in the Marshall Plan in Germany, we've been increasingly interconnected. The problem is, as we buy our televisions and radios, our automobiles, our defense capabilities and pharmaceuticals, the supply chain is so complicated and so interrelated that if one country, either deliberately because they're hostile to America, like China at times, decides to shut down one component, most manufacturing pieces of equipment include dozens, if not hundreds, of parts, any one of which, if you cut off, America can't produce its needs. Most recently, it's pharmaceuticals, where the Chinese are threatening to stop the necessary development of drugs. So the good news is we are building an American supply chain and a Florida supply chain. Associated Industries of Florida has partnered with Space Florida, who represents all of the space industries, and a organization that has 20,000 small manufacturers across the state that they work with called Florida Makes. And we are building a supply chain so that when needed, Americans can rely on American manufacturers throughout their entire supply chain, which could be hundreds or thousands of small vendors.
Well, what's the biggest hurdle to being able to make things here in America? We can look at Florida or the broader picture, but we always used to talk about we make stuff, right? We make the best stuff, but it's a lot of hurdles, and a lot of people have a lot of debates about it. My perspective is that when you put so many regulations and so much managed trade deals that are not really free market, they're really kind of picking winners and losers, a lot of cronyism going on. What happens is that's what kind of erodes the production base in a society. And when you have that regulatory complex, when you have the subsidies for picking winners and losers and letting the little guys flounder in the wilderness, that's what creates the conditions we're seeing with manufacturing. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's right. And manufacturing is only about 5.5 or 6% of Florida's economy. In some states, like Indiana, where Vice President Pence is from, it's as much as 25 or 30%. The good news is that Florida, as manufacturing has become more clean and high tech, our rocket industry, our technology companies, we are developing sophisticated cyber response, which is a component of protecting America's supply chain, stopping attacks from not only bad pirates and hackers, which is happening all over the place, but state coordinated actors. Every day, China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and others are probing to see where America's vulnerabilities are in our power system, in our banking system, in our transportation system. And so, as you refer to what I call the alphabet soup of federal agencies, I think the current administration, one thing they've done right is they have focused on trying to reduce the burdens of the alphabet soup of federal agencies' regulations, whether it's OSHA or, imposed radical anti-business environmental regulations and labor regulations, among other things. Additionally, I think this administration, whether you like it or not, is focused on doing trade agreements that benefit America and not having regional agreements where every country can get its say and America becomes the big dog that gets wagged around by a bunch of tails. And like it or not, we need to build an American supply chain. The solution that is being put together to connect manufacturers with all their sophisticated capabilities, whether you got a 5-person shop or whether you're Northrop Grumman, PepsiCo, Tropicana, all the agriculture, you talked about meat producers, all of those folks are eligible to participate. And for now, it's free. We're going to help nationally. The Federal Emergency Management Association connects to this database to help hospitals and other providers of critical healthcare services during the virus. There's a website you can go to if you're a hospital to search increasing capabilities as this gets populated. So, look, workforce is one huge issue. The second big issue is a supply chain that is protected, that is U.S.-based, and is secure. And that's the component that we've been dealing with in the last 4 days.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see these different components come into play and to see how fast the market forces can come together to get these things developed. We're speaking with Tom Feeney. He's the president and CEO of Associated Industries of Florida. Their website's AIF.com. We'll continue to find out what we need to do to make prescription drugs, people that need these drugs right now, make them here in America, here in Florida perhaps. We'll continue in just a moment, live on A Neighbor's Choice with Tom Feeney. Don't go anywhere.
Are you looking to really boost your business? I mean, really boost your business. If you were told that with a small investment of less than $3,000 per month, that you would receive tens of thousands of views of your ads, would you be interested? Well, get interested because we have the formula that is working for many businesses, big and small. With the use of video, radio, and social media, targeted no-waste marketing is very successful. Contact us at UnitedCitiesProductions.com or web at RadioGenesis.com. That's web at RadioGenesis.com or the old-fashioned way at 813-250-3883. That's 813-250-3883. Get in the marketing game that is effective in every way. UnitedCitiesProductions.com. That's UnitedCitiesProductions.com.
And now, Roof Artisan LLC is reminding all Americans to show support to the brave men and women of our U.S. military. This proud salute is brought to you by Roof Artisan LLC, serving our area with pride for years. For the very best in full-service roofing, including installs, tear-offs, and much more, trust Roof Artisan LLC and call today, 813-361-7444. That's 813-361-7444. That's Roof Artisan LLC, proudly saluting our troops and veterans. They're people who care.
The following message is sponsored by the Florida Department of Elder Affairs, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this radio station.
Have you ever given your Social Security number to someone without knowing why they need it? Has your Medicare card been stolen? If you think you've been a victim of Medicare fraud, contact the SHINE Senior Medicare Patrol Program. They empower seniors to prevent Medicare fraud and can help if you've been a victim. To speak to a SHINE counselor, call 1-800-963-5337 or go to floridashine.org.
My name is Roz. Most people know me as a spokesperson for 1-800-ASK-GARY. The driver made a left turn onto ongoing traffic and I hit her. Once I got out of my vehicle and I was able to stand up, then I started feeling pain elsewhere. I had to think. Call 1-800-ASK-GARY. They were on the ball, helping me find legal and medical help. They have thousands of other people, but they make you feel like you're their top priority. I made the call. I now tell other people to make.
Non-attorney spokesperson.
My part-time service in the Army National Guard makes it possible for me to be more for the community I call home.
I'm a better neighbor because my service has taught me how important it is to be a team player. My training helps me in my classes when I give attention to detail to the task at hand. My service in the Army National Guard allows me to keep my country safe from threats. Learn more about how you too can live and serve part-time by visiting NationalGuard.com.
Sponsored by the Florida Army National Guard. Aired by the Florida Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. We're live, and we're talking about getting back to work. How important that is on this Good Friday. There was a lot of work done on that Good Friday, and is continuing to be done in history, which we'll get into a little bit later on when we have my good friend Pastor Jim Fitzgerald, who just got back from the Middle East, where he spends a lot of time with the Yazidi people and the folks living in the midst of turmoil over there on a constant basis. But now we're turning a little closer to home, talking about how to manufacture things here locally. I'm a believer in the old saying, the answer to globalism is localism, and that the future is decentralization, and that we cannot rely on top-down, big monopoly, central command solutions for things. Look at Taiwan, a small country, didn't pay attention to WHO, and they did a lot better so far in their response than a lot of countries who were doing the guidance of the WHO. So turning to Florida for a moment, though we do have a nice following nationally online, but just to highlight Florida here as our home base, we have Tom Feeney. He's the president and CEO of Associated Industries of Florida. Tom, I wanted to ask you, what got you into your work in the Industries of Florida Association?
Well, David, I spent 12 years in the Florida legislature. Way back in 1994, I was Jeb Bush's running mate, became Speaker of the House in 2000. I spent 6 years in the U.S. Congress, and I recognized that the thing that made me most passionate in life has always been helping people find jobs in productive employment networks. And so Associated Industries of Florida is a 100-year-old organization which is the leading advocate for the voice of Florida business. We are headquartered in Tallahassee. I live in the Orlando area. And one of the many things we do, we've got a lot of IT companies, we've got major ports, we've got the theme parks, including Disney, Universal, we've got telecommunications, we've got banks and insurance to help make sure that the business network in Florida is strong and getting stronger. One of our components is we're the state affiliate of the National Association of Manufacturers, and as you pointed out, America can't be great unless it can build what it needs, both in emergencies, during hurricanes. Now we know pandemics. Eventually there'll be a cyber attack on a major U.S. state. But for the long term, in good times, we need to grow our economy, create well-paying, high-wage, high-benefit jobs, and one of those great jobs are in the STEM fields, and manufacturers are looking for competent workforce that they can pay good money to in both good times and bad.
What's one of the biggest misconceptions people may have about manufacturing in Florida?
Well, you know, when I started out, and I can remember having conversations with Governor Bush at the time, manufacturing in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and I come from Pennsylvania, a lot of your listeners are from up north, manufacturing meant dirty things. It meant coal. It meant dirty jobs. It meant pollution. It meant low-wage jobs. It meant assembly lines. Nowadays, Florida manufacturing is high-tech. We're a net exporter of technology and communications in Florida. We rely on our ports, our trucking industry, our rail lines. We support a lot of businesses if you're a manufacturer. And so One of the major misconceptions is that manufacturing is like Gary, Indiana, with smokestacks coming out. Well, nowadays, manufacturers are cleaner in their facility after a product goes out than when it comes in. They're roboticized. The jobs that are being created are, you don't have to have a 4-year degree to get a great job if you have some technical skills, if you can work with your hands. But you do need basic STEM skills, science, technology, engineering, or math. But at all levels of capability and competence, we can train people to be productive and making America better than it's ever been.
One of the things that we've been looking at on this program and investigating, I wrote a column about it this week on Town Hall and different outlets, was the idea that, kind of along the lines of what President Trump signaled when he said hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin might be game changers we need to take a look at. And other doctors have been using these two in combination. They're both generics. They're both, there's not a lot of literature as it relates to this new virus, but it's something that folks are using on the ground on the front lines. I've taken a particular focus on azithromycin, also known as Z-Pak. It's a generic antibiotic. And I was looking at where it's manufactured. It looks like, I guess, most of it's in India right now. And then India had signaled some noise recently that they might have to stop exporting some of the drugs that they may need too. So it really made me think, based on the researchers that I'm looking at, like Professor Lasanti and Salford University, Z-Pak could be a critical, very, very cheap, generic frontline offense to take on this COVID-19 and other similar pandemics that may come after. And I was thinking, this is a no-brainer. We need to be making this kind of a drug in America. How does that even get started? People don't even think about that in the general public. How would you start making these types of generic drugs in America? Is it something even feasible, or is it only the big guys can do it?
No, it's totally feasible. And the so-called big guys, in that case, the big pharmaceutical industries, what happens is they do a lot of their own research. They spend a lot of money. A lot of their experiments fail. They don't turn out well market-wise. And when they do have a success, for example, whoever can find a vaccination is going to make a lot of money. But the thing is, as we sort of get jealous when a company makes a lot of money in a situation like that, if they can cure a problem, and they might have spent money on 99 tests and wasted money on 99, but they develop one drug that can cure or deal with a situation like this, it opens up our lives again for us. So in some ways, the private sector, you can't have centralized government planning, as you pointed out, resolve solutions to today's crisis. All centralized government can do is deal with 50-year-old protocols that are useless in whatever new crisis we face as a country. The defense industry is the same way. Whether you make rockets, whether you make submarines, whether you make sensitive intelligence capabilities so we can protect ourselves, we need an American reliable supply chain so that we don't have, whether it's enemies or people that otherwise are simply interrupted in their ability to deliver one out of, say, 100 or 200 components, that shuts down all 199 other vendors that are supplying components because you've got to have every piece. And so we need to make sure that we have options whether it's in good times or whether it's in a hurricane, a pandemic, or a cyber threat, we can rely on an American-based supply chain. And I think you make some great points about it's nice to do business with the rest of the world, but you don't want to be dependent on your enemies when you need to have drug capabilities, defense, intelligence capabilities, or deal with a hurricane.
Yeah, it's something that we need to really think about, how to reorient our priorities. Let's talk about this new website, florida.mfgconnects.com. I've saw some news from you guys about this website. Tell folks what this is all about, what this website can help with.
So Connects is CONNEX, and it's at Florida Makes. Florida Makes is a federally government-supported entity that works with 20,000 small manufacturers in the state. For the time being, manufacturers can go in and fill out that database for free, no cost, and they will be available to whether hospitals need to use their product. I work with the biggest manufacturing companies in America: Anheuser-Busch, PepsiCo, Tropicana, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed, and nationally hundreds of others. This is a way for small Florida business manufacturers to get in, and whether they have masks or surgical gloves or gowns, the needs in this crisis will change, David. We'll have a new crisis. If you can put your information in for free, it will be shared with the biggest players in the world during the crisis. And so I encourage manufacturers to go there. And the U.S. Defense Department is working with our state Department of Economic Opportunity to build a defense supply chain that is secure, that is protected. And in Florida, Governor DeSantis' team at the Department of Economic Opportunity are developing a capability that hopefully will be interoperable. But it's important now. But it's important, and we've already got overnight, literally in 24 hours, there are 40 companies that can either make masks or have masks or gowns or ventilators. 40 companies have populated within the first 24, 30 hours of rollout. I think we're going to get hundreds in here in the next. So go to Florida Makes, and all over their website is a capability called Connex, CONNEX. And again, the Florida Emergency or the U.S. Federal Emergency Management Association for now is connecting into that website as it gets built out to make sure hospitals throughout Florida and the country and other providers of critical healthcare services have what they need.
Well, I think it's clear we need to start thinking about how to manufacture, how to develop these supply chains locally here. So it's a pleasure talking to you, Tom Feeney, and I hope to have you on again to learn more about what's going on in businesses here in our area.
Happy Easter weekend. This is, and again, happy Passover and all face. But this will be a good resurrection weekend in ways for the business community as we figure out solutions to this pandemic.
Very good. Thanks again, Tom. We'll continue live on A Neighbor's Choice. Hold tight just a second. We'll be right back.
If you know anything about NFL or about NCAA basketball or football or NHL or whatever, entertainment television, make sure you make a deposit at betdsi.com.
Promo code Bubba100.
Again, make a deposit. They've been getting a lot of great response from the Bubba Army. Make your deposit using promo code Bubba100. It's simple. Go to betdsi.com.
Promo code Bubba100.
Sign up with the Bubba100 code and make that deposit and get your bonus, plus have some fun at the safest wagering site available. Fast, on-time paying their winnings out, incredibly mobile friendly. And if you haven't already signed up, then go now. Make your deposit at betdsi.com.
Promo code Bubba100.
Bubba100 gets you a special bonus and gets you in the game. Again, www.betdsi.com. And at the promo code portion,
Bubba100.
Bubba100. Thank you.
Our friends at Big Yellow Dumpster are reminding listeners that each year, thousands of women lose their lives in the battle against breast cancer. So ladies, please schedule your checkup today. This life-saving tip brought to you by Big Yellow Dumpster, our local roll-off dumpster expert. Family-owned and operated for the last 13 years, delivering on time and every time. Give the pros a call today at 727-564-0090, 727-564-0090. That's Big Yellow Dumpster.
This message is sponsored by the Florida A&M University Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this radio station.
Where I'm from, marijuana is legal. Can I use it in Florida?
Nah, it's illegal here. 20 grams or less is a misdemeanor, and more than 20 grams is a felony.
Well, I have epilepsy. Should I try to get a medical marijuana prescription?
Now that's legal, but talk to your doctor first to see if it's a qualifying condition and if medical marijuana is even right for you.
I will, thanks.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. Good Friday today, and I see it as a time to get to work. A lot of work to do to make the world a better place, to make our healthy bodies healthier. That's what this program is dedicated to, getting things done on the local level, individual to individual. And that's what's exciting about this program, is there's so many ways we can explore that. I'm David Gornoski, your host. And again, happy Good Friday to you. I think this is a time of reflection. I think this is a time of contemplation for a lot of folks. It's really hard to know how to sort out the narratives. If you watch half the media complex, it's, the darkest hour is yet to come still. We must stay imprisoned in our homes, waiting for welfare checks, as many socialists would love us to do, basically forever. Waiting for them to tell us what to do, tell us how to get vaccinated. Bill Gates wants us to have kind of like a digital certificate or something. That's what I've heard floating around from those circles. And there's a lot of confusion in the state serving media. But then on the other side, there's a lot of folks who are saying, no, it's time that we stop the fear complex and start pushing ahead, breathing in the fresh air of freedom. Doing that with me right now is my guest, is the president of the Mises Institute, Jeff Deist. How you doing, Jeff?
Hi, David. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well, and welcome to Tampa Bay, who is we've added to our Tampa Bay audience, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota, all over the area, as well as our Orlando listeners who've been loyal to us. I'm glad to bring you into the conversation here in the Sunshine State.
Well, it's been interesting, and Florida's been a bit of a test case on this coronavirus at the outset because there were, it was an older population, and at the beginning anyway, Governor DeSantis was a little less inclined to shut the state down as early as some other states did, and I think that's to his credit. I'm not sure if all Floridians agree, but I certainly do. And now, unfortunately, we're seeing Florida out in front again with respect to some of these lines for unemployment insurance, where the apparently either the state website isn't working properly or some people aren't able to access it. So they've taken to the streets and gone out physically to the stand in line in front of the state unemployment offices. So, Florida is an important state. Obviously, it was an important state for Trump, but it continues to be sort of a test case state for the rest of us.
Yeah, it's kind of a confusing time where, it's amazing how few voices in elected office can stand the pressure of the mitigate risk at all costs crowd. I saw there was a hashtag end the shutdown trending, and then a lot of poor little frightened politically correct folks were saying this is a manufacturing of Russian bots. I said, my goodness. So I guess they think Russia's goal is to try to help our economy get back on its feet or something. I mean, come on, can you believe this stuff?
Well, let's not forget that unemployment insurance in this country is largely run through states. And states, unlike the feds, can't just print money at will to pay for this. So I suspect that a lot of governors like Mr. DeSantis are going to ultimately require a bailout from the federal government in the form of some kind of either credit facility or just outright fiscal policy, money from the feds directly to pay for all this unemployment insurance. It's going to be just enormous. I think you probably already have several million new unemployed folks in Florida alone.
Yeah, you have a new article on Mises.org, which is your website for the Mises Institute. It says what governors can do. What are some of the things that you're highlighting here in this story that we need to think about?
Well, I think a group of governors could get together and say we are going to have a different policy than the federal government. I mean, Trump, to his credit, and this surprises me a bit, has not instituted an absolute federal shutdown or a national shutdown. There's still room for governors to operate here. And I think some of them should take a look around and say that we're going to be open for business right away. or at least, May 1st or something like that. But in a modified fashion, we're going to take some steps to protect older people first and foremost, and then, provide perhaps different kinds of insurance, make it available to employers and to employees too, to say that if by chance you get sick, we're going to have a state facility to pay for your health care. There's a lot of things that states could be doing with bond measures. There's a lot of things they could be doing to buy prescription drugs and stockpile those individually. There's a lot of things states could be doing to try to work out rental agreements, leases between landlords and tenants. But instead, as you and I have discussed before, we've sort of created this mentality where everyone's sitting at home looking to Washington, D.C. And I'll tell you what, the governors better be careful, because Washington can't save them here. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the effects of this are going to be felt very close to home. And if a governor wants to make a name for himself or herself, now is the time to do it by being a little more entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, of course, this, your story says we were already in uncharted territory, but the coronavirus truly laid bare the deep and intolerable political divisions racking our country.
Yes, and as you can see, people are responding to this virus the same way they respond to other news of the day, other events, in a political way.
Yeah,
they're using it to boost the case for their own worldview, whether that's Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden or Donald Trump or whatever candidate or whatever perspective you want to choose. People are just digging in and saying, oh, this virus shows that we need X. And it just so happens that X is their political program. So we shouldn't be surprised by this. And David, it doesn't feel like after 9/11, when I do think that, first of all, maybe it was superficial, but the country felt unified and also felt behind New York City, even though only some people live in New York City, but the whole country was sort of supportive of what was happening there because New York bore the brunt of that attack. So this time, though, it sure doesn't feel like there's a unity out there or some kind of coming together. It feels like this is just intensifying the Trump, anti-Trump, red state, blue state divide that was already there.
Well, I believe, and this kind of goes to one of my theses that I try to explore on this program, which is I think that unity has traditionally in the past come about through a common enemy that you can get pretty much everybody unanimously on the same page saying, yep, that's the one we're going to hate the most. That's the one we're going to quarantine guilt on the most. And everybody believes it, and it creates kind of a madness of the crowds where they all kind of get into a stupor. And they get united in purging the villain who is, whether it's in the ancient times, it would be a chieftain or a king or a monarch who failed to get rid of the pestilence. But now they can't get that unity. Obviously, they try. And millions of people hate Trump, or millions of people want to destroy the Chinese, everything about them. And millions of people want to destroy Christians and say they poisoned the water or something, got everybody sick. I mean, the stupidity that you see in the media is breathtaking. But nevertheless, I don't think we can unify around a scapegoat. And if we can't, then there is no ability to go back to unification or a sense of togetherness on a grand scale like the entire United States of America.
Well, the obvious scapegoat for a lot of people is Trump. In other words, to say this virus, or at least the calamity resulting from it, is all Trump's fault, and that if he had done X, Y, and Z, we'd be okay today. If he had taken this seriously, been out in front of it, ordered a national response. But that's going to be a very tough sell, because we see that other countries have been in much the same circumstances with respect to the virus. We're also going to see that there are a lot of Trump haters who early on in February were dismissing this and saying, oh, you should still go out and about. New York is very safe. Dr. Fauci himself was quoted as saying, I don't think this is going to be much of a thing in America. So they're going to have a hard time doing that. They're also going to have a hard time arguing that he hasn't been authoritarian enough, because that's what they've always said about Trump, is that he's an authoritarian and that he doesn't listen to people around him. He doesn't care about Congress. He doesn't care about the rule of law. So it's a little bit of an odd position to now be saying, well, why hasn't he done more to ignore the rule of law and just act like a king? I don't think they're going to be able to hang this on Trump simply because you see how nimble he is during these endless afternoon press conferences. He's just used to the hostility, and he throws it right back at them. So when you get beyond that, who's the scapegoat? Is it the Chinese? Well, the Chinese people don't have anything to do with this. Is it somehow capitalism? Well, all the ventilators and drugs we're using to try to fight this thing are produced essentially by capitalism. It's very, very tough to pick an easy villain here, and as a result, because of what politics does to us, I think people are going to be thrashing around looking for one. So I don't know about you, David. It doesn't feel to me like Joe Biden is exciting people at this point. I mean, he's hardly a huge opposite to Trump.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting time we're in here. I think that the key issue that we have to continue to articulate is that it's always fear and anxiety that's necessary for tyranny to thrive. When fear and anxiety start to diminish, freedom has an opportunity to move in and take care of our needs in a more efficient manner. Do you see that too?
Well, fear is always bad policy. And when government acts quickly, especially when it acts bigly, as Scott Adams, the Dilbert journalist, calls it, really bad things can happen. And we can see all kinds of examples in U.S. history where an overreaction led to a program or a loss of liberty that endured for many, many decades. The 9/11 terrorist attacks and the Patriot Act thereafter, the Department of Homeland Security, those are all examples, in my view, of terrible overreactions by government that still plague us. So God forbid that some of these temporary directives by all of these governors don't go back to normal afterwards. And that's the ratchet effect. State power tends to go one way, and we better keep an eye on these governors of ours and push them to get life back to normal.
And I want to ask you, we'll take a quick break, but I want to ask you and get your thoughts on Dr. Fauci's comments recently where he suggested maybe we'll have to have a solution where Americans have to have their papers that indicate whether they're certified immune from the coronavirus to be able to travel. What a delightful idea. I mean, the media was just salivating. They're like, oh, I love this. I love this. Well, I don't know why they love it. Whatever they're eating, I don't know what's getting their minds so wrapped up in this fervor for such levels of control we can't even imagine. Let's continue live with Jeff Deist. Follow him at Jeff Deist on Twitter for more commentary throughout the week. We'll continue in just a moment here on Good Friday. Don't go anywhere.
Attention homeowners. Do you have a house that's in need of serious repairs? Do you have tenants that never seem to make their monthly payments? How about code violations, past due taxes, or maintenance costs you just can't afford? Then call my friends right now at Quick Cash Offer. They specialize in buying any home, no matter how ugly the situation. Turn that problem property into cash right now. It's just that simple. One call and you can get rid of that home headache forever. They buy the ugliest houses with instant closings, instant cash, and huge savings. Plus, there are no realtor fees, no listing fees, and no repair costs. Just cash in your hands for that painful property. They're buying a few more houses in your neighborhood this month. So take advantage of this cash offer and call Quick Cash Offer now.
800-775-4514. 800-775-4514. That's 800-775-4514.
CNC Services of Tampa Incorporated is reminding motorists to save the text message for when it's not going to cause an accident. This safety tip brought to you by our local leaders at CNC Services of Tampa Incorporated, the AC pros who strive to be the best because they care the most. Call today at 813-967-5117, 813-967-5117, and like them on Facebook. That's CNC Services of Tampa Incorporated. Going the extra mile for safety, they are professionals who care.
The following message is sponsored by the Florida Department of Elder Affairs, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this radio station.
As prescription costs rise, many Medicare beneficiaries are having difficulty keeping up. The Florida Department of Elder Affairs SHINE program may be able to help. SHINE counselors can guide you to money-saving programs, including one that may help pay your Medicare Part D costs. For more information, call 1-800-963-5337 or go to floridashine.org.
And now, the fine folks at House of Painters are reminding motorists to save a text message for when it's not going to cause an accident. Put down your cell phone and never text and drive. This safety tip is brought to you courtesy of House of Painters, our #1 most trusted painting, pressure washing, and refinishing service. Call them for a free estimate at 941-822-3234. That's 941-822-3234. That's House of Painters, reminding you to never text and drive.
They say it should be impossible for bumblebees to fly because their wings are too small for their bodies. But bumblebees don't care. They just fly. Bright Expectations is dedicated to helping our Florida residents with special needs and unique abilities find the resources, support, and inspiration that they and their families need to break barriers and achieve their dreams. Visit www.brightexpectations.com to start your journey today.
This message is sponsored by the Florida Department of Health, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this radio station.
Hello, Good Friday. Hello, Tampa Bay. Hello, Orlando. Hello, the world online. This is A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gornoski. We're here with Jeff Deist. He's the president of the Mises Institute. The website is Mises.org, named after the great economist Ludwig von Mises, who escaped the hell of Nazi Germany and created some of the most extensive texts about the power of free individuals to create and make wealth without using violence to rig it in the favor of certain interests. Jeff, I have a question here from Brad on our online stream. He asks, any comment on the HB1 visas and opening up more apprenticeships or other options to get local workers into high-tech plants?
Well, I suppose this is going to change the whole immigration debate, the coronavirus, because obviously global travel is one of the things that enabled the spread of this. So I think that's just a new world we live in. I've heard some differing stories about whether Trump's increasing or decreasing visas right now, but I'll tell you what, I personally am hugely for any kind of apprenticeship program. And let's face it, our university model is not faring too well and probably won't be back to full strength this fall. If all the students come back, as they basically have not come back from spring break. So apprenticeship, especially in skilled trades for things like lawyers, that's how it was done for a long time. So I'm all for it.
And just to reiterate in my column, I'm calling for clinical trials need to be done right here in America using Z-Pak alone and doxycycline alone. That's another antibiotic. Both of those are generics. You know what I love about that, Jeff, is they don't have this, I have some issues with patent laws and how those things work, and I love it when you can get an antibiotic, because then it's like you can actually get some market forces actually working in these fields a little faster,
Well, azithromycin and doxycycline, to my knowledge, are both just cheap generics drugs at this point. Nobody holds a patent for them, so you can talk about treating people for a few dollars a week, maybe, if they just let us try these treatments.
And I want to reiterate this point, because the whole big terror of this whole thing is the possibility of having what they call a cytokine storm, where your immune system, if you're elderly or you have a lot of comorbidities, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, all these things, then you are more likely to have potential for some fatal or some serious issues with this virus. What I just hate about it is not a single one of these so-called geniuses like Dr. Fauci or any of these guys are talking about what's necessary to keep your body healthy. They're not talking about sunshine and fresh air, getting good sleep. They're not talking about staying away from massive carbohydrates, because massive carbohydrates shape the USDA. So they don't talk about their strings that are attached to these little puppets. The little Muppets can't. And it's just so shameful that millions of folks around the country and the world, they just cling to the television and they look at these little Muppets and they say, tell me, Kermit, tell me what's going to happen next. Tell me what to do. And little Kermit, Dr. Fauci, these guys, they just can't tell them the truth. And the folks just, they don't know how to look at that little string above them. They just can't see it.
Well, it's amazing. I haven't heard a single federal official or state official that I can think of talk about how to just boost your immune system and make yourself less vulnerable to the virus or less susceptible to serious illness if you catch it. I haven't heard anyone say that. All I've heard them say is cramp up in your house and watch TV for 6 weeks, which is making people sicker and fatter and keeping them out of the sunlight and keeping them away from socialization and probably increasing alcoholism and all kinds of coping mechanisms. So it's absolutely crazy that these guys aren't even talking about the half of the equation, which is being healthy in the first place, so that if you contact the virus, you'll be okay. So that's absolutely criminal. And I think that you're right that part of it is simply because of big ag and other interests have captured the U.S. federal government so heavily that we imagine that carbohydrates are the staple of our diet. But this is pretty bad, because what Fauci and these others really want is some sort of vaccine that they're going to mandate for all of us. And we don't really even know what this virus really is yet. We don't really know if people produce antibodies by having the virus, or if they don't. We don't really know whether, what a vaccine would look like, whether it would be broad enough to cover all the potential strains of this virus. I mean, there's a lot of what ifs. But they're making it sound like a vaccine will be tested and developed, and then once it's done, we won't have to worry, and you'll just get a needle in your arm and you won't have to worry about the virus. I think it's a dangerous mindset, because it offloads all the responsibility for our health onto this magic vaccine maker who's coming. And if we just sit at home long enough, they'll be there. And of course, who knows if the thing will even work?
Yeah, it's a nonsense, and it seems like they're so busy scapegoating China, they're becoming like China more and more. This is not America, where you have everybody. Dr. Fauci said we may have to have papers, to present that we are certified immune from the COVID-19. I mean, can you believe this? How is this even happening? I can't believe that's the kind of conversation that's being spoken of without any real pushback from any so-called leaders in political office today.
I've heard that floated as well, the idea that you're going to need some sort of proof of having been vaccinated. And we already have that in our society to an extent. Oftentimes you can't enroll your child in local public schools if that child can't show that they've gotten certain vaccines. I mean, this stuff is already happening, but they love the opportunity here to accelerate it. And I've heard Bill Gates talk about how you could have a profile in the form of an invisible tattoo on your body or an implantable chip that gives out medical information in real time, and it was constantly updated as you went to the doctor or whatever. And that, of course, this could work with a mobile app or other kinds of some sort of government scan, so that you could go around and enter buildings, enter airports, public transportation, that sort of thing. And I mean, all of this technology is possible. It's being used to an extent already in China, where people have to use their cell phones. They have to download an app on their cell phones, which allows the Chinese government to track where they've been and determine whether they've been in contact or close to, infected communities, that sort of thing. So it's not, nothing they can't do already. The question is whether we'll let them. And this crisis has allowed people like Fauci, who I think is a very bad guy, to sort of float trial balloons about this kind of stuff. Maybe we'll have to do these things. And he's not saying maybe we'll have to put these things to a vote. He's just saying maybe we'll have to do these things, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah, so they want us maybe possibly registered with our papers, and they want us chipped, which goes along well with reports I saw in the news that in some cities, in the bigger cities, people were howling out of their windows. It's like a ritual in some of the blue states, I guess, They're all crammed in their little apartments and they're howling. So they're already getting domesticated, ready for their chips, I guess, from Bill Gates. It's sad, huh? too bad, huh?
Well, people will probably go along with a lot of things to get out of this quarantine. And everyone's looking for a savior or a hope. And they're trying to place that now on a vaccine. And Fauci and other governors have made it sound like life will never be normal until we actually have a vaccine. And that's again, something that's pretty troubling because it's up to us to decide when life is normal, not them.
Well, remember, it was the 1960s when the federal government declared war on cancer. My goodness, how long has it been? They haven't gotten any further, huh? Ooh, don't let them do a war on COVID. Good gracious. Jeff, always a pleasure to talk to you. Want people to know that Mises.org is a great place to go. That's where I learned about Austrian economics, which is just another word for free markets without coercion, without violence, without the need to collectively violently attack certain people and take money from other people. That's a myth. That's a myth that's in the dark ages. And this program and what Jeff Deist does is all about trying to make that myth a little farther in the rearview mirror so that we can move on to a place that's local, that's decentralized, and that's family first. I'm David Gornoski. You've listened to A Neighbor's Choice. Jeff, thanks for joining me on the program.
I enjoyed it, David. Thank you.
And folks, up next, we're going to have a reflection about Good Friday with my friend, Pastor Jim Fitzgerald.
Your local sports station. Let's do this. Turn it up. Sports Talk 1040, The Team. WHBO, Pinellas Park.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to grow up without a mother or father? Or worse, having your father drop you off at a foster care facility and leave you there without coming back? Hi, my name is Cindy Tilley, and that's exactly what happened to me. I grew up in a foster care setting. I struggled every day to survive the difficult situations that I was not prepared for. And that is why I founded Forgotten Angels. Many children, boys and girls, are placed in a foster care facility here in Florida. Kids who have aged out need direction, support, encouragement in order to become productive citizens. That is exactly what we do at Forgotten Angels with our beautiful, tranquil facility in Valrico, Florida. We prepare these children to get an education and eventually get employed. Will you help? Please contact me at ForgottenAngelsFlorida.org. That's ForgottenAngelsFlorida.org. You can make a difference with these foster children.
My name is Roz. Most people know me as a spokesperson for 1-800-ASK-GARY. The driver made a left turn onto ongoing traffic and I hit her. Once I got out of my vehicle and I was able to stand up, then I started feeling pain elsewhere. I had to think. Call 1-800-ASK-GARY. They were on the ball, helping me find legal and medical help. They have thousands of other people, but they make you feel like you're their top priority. I made the call. I now tell other people to make.
Non-attorney spokesperson.
Hey, it's Bubba the Love Sponge. With all the coronavirus stuff going on, you've heard the CDC say wash your hands about 1 zillion times. You know, studies show that the average person touches their face 23 times an hour. Your nose, eyes, and mouth, that's called the T-zone. And the T-zone is the most important area to keep clean. And for over 12 years, there's this product called TheraWorks Protect. It's been used by millions of emergency room patients and medical clinics to support infection prevention. TheraWorks Protect is easy to use and it's safe to apply several times a day on your hands and around your nose and eyes and mouth, better known again as the T-zone. Just apply a small amount into your hand and rub it in until it dries, and then apply another amount and rub it all over your T-zone. You know, finding hand sanitizer sometimes can be difficult, and now you can order TheraWorks Protect online. Just get it directly from them. Go to TZoneProtect.com and use the Bubba Kicker. When you use the Bubba / you're going to get 20% off and free freight, and you're going to have it in a few days. Again, TZoneProtect.com / Bubba. Start protecting yourself and the ones that you love now.
The Army National Guard plays a vital role in your community. We're on the front lines supporting essential personnel, first responders, law enforcement, and medical professionals, delivering food, supplies, and medicine, keeping communities safe, making a difference. During emergencies, we're always ready, always there. Learn more about part-time service in the Army National Guard at nationalguard.com.
Sponsored by the Florida Army National Guard, aired by the Florida Association of Broadcasters and this station.
So you've decided to jump into the world of media with a podcast. How's that working? Hopefully well. But if you're only seeing a handful of downloads, then it's time to air your podcast on radio to give it the reach it deserves. Thousands will hear it, not just a few. Call today to find out more how we can bring an audience to your podcast on this station. 813-250-3883. That's 813-250-3883. Or email to info@unitedcitiespro.com. That's info@unitedcitiespro.com.
Excuse me, do you know how to get to Maine and Maple?
Do you have these in a 7.5?
How's that cooked? Can I get that shipped overnight?
Is there a direct flight?
How long does the warranty last?
What's your soup of the day? How do you change the ringtone?
Does it come in blue?
Does this bus stop at Elm Street?
We ask questions everywhere in life.
Is it raining out?
What time's the meeting? How much does this cost? Does it have four-wheel drive? Have we met before?
What's my account balance?
Yet somehow, when we get to the doctor's office... Any questions?
No.
We clam up. Ask questions.
What is this test for?
Are there any side effects?
When do I get my results?
Questions lead to better healthcare. Go to ahrq.gov for a list of 10 questions everyone should know. Questions are the answer. Public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Mom always told us to eat our fruits and veggies. Well, there's no better way to keep Mom happy than to take Fortify organic blue-green superfood. Studies indicate people who consume the most fruits and veggies each day are the healthiest with the best improved immune system. This product was created and designed by board-certified Dr. Michael Lang. You know him from the program Ask the Doctor. During this viral pandemic crisis, Dr. Lang recommends eating 10 servings of organic fruits and veggies a day, but this may not be realistic. This product produced by Dr. Lang has developed one of the first all-organic, gluten-free, and FODMAP-free superfood. It's called Fortify Organic Blue-Green Superfood. It's simple to take. Drink 1 serving a day to get 12 different superfoods. It's compatible for people with IBS since it's FODMAP-free. Perfect for anyone who needs a fruit and vegetable boost. Right now, Fortify is offering 25% off this superfood product. Go to Fortify.com. That's Fortify.com. Use promo code RADIO and receive the 25% discount. Eat healthy, be healthy. Fortify.com. Keeping America fit and healthy during this time of precautionary change.
Sometimes a family needs a little help to deal with life stresses. You can contribute to happy, healthy childhoods with a few simple steps. Notice families under stress. Offer a helping hand. Give your time. Talk about healthy child development. Connect a family with resources. Contributing to a great childhood can be as easy as being a good neighbor. For more, preventchildabusefl.org. This message is sponsored by the Ounce of Prevention Fund of Florida, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this radio station.
From the heart of Central Florida, you are listening to the most electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your neighbor, David Gornoski. Welcome back to our program. We're soaring high across Central Florida, from Tampa Bay to the Space Coast, points in between, places like St. Pete, Sarasota, Lakeland, Florida, Orlando, and all over. We're also worldwide. You can watch us on our video live stream on YouTube. Search for David Gornoski, that's me, or Facebook. You can watch the video stream there or subscribe to our podcast if you missed some of the episodes. And look, we interview some of the world's greatest minds at the cutting edge of understanding our world today in both the physical sciences, natural sciences, and the economy, things that are dealing with our social life. And joining us now is a time of for reflection on Good Friday and the coming Resurrection Sunday that we have. My good friend, Pastor Jim Fitzgerald. How you doing, Jim?
Hi, David. I'm doing well, thank you. How you doing?
I'm doing well too. Now you just got back into the country, didn't you? Where were you off to?
I did. I just got back, actually a week ago today. I was in both Egypt and Iraq.
Okay, very good. So you were over in Egypt and Iraq, and can you tell us a little bit of an update about what's going on over there for folks? Because right now everybody's thinking about corona, but there's a lot of other folks out there with a lot of other problems going on.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were over there doing ministry with Equipping Pastors International and doing training, theological educational training. Unfortunately, the whole world is talking about corona now, so we had some good ministry in Iraq, but then the time in Egypt was all shut down by the time the dates came for class. So we were quite affected by the coronavirus and all the reactions to it, even in Egypt. So,
well, are they getting hit hard by it over there where you were at?
No, actually, I mean, if the numbers can be believed, they were having relatively low numbers of cases and deaths comparatively to, Europe and America. But they were still taking precautions. I mean, most everybody around the world sort of follows America's, lead in all these things. And then, they may be like a week or 2 weeks behind in terms of the restrictions. But by the time I had left, they'd pretty much caught up to where we are now. But I think the one difference is that, the people there didn't quite seem to me to be as panicked about things as they do here. That was, I think, just part of sort of the Egyptian psychology. They're just not as panicked about things as sometimes we are.
Well, as a pastor, Jim, I wanted to get your take. A listener messaged the show saying, you realize that COVID-19 has Christians agreeing that church is non-essential.
Mm.
What do you think of that as a pastor?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have had a lot of thoughts about that, and I've gone back and forth in that in my mind, trying to reason all that out. I mean, first of all, you can't accept the premise that the church is not essential. The gathering of the body of Christ is absolutely essential, I think. Throughout history, what you can see is that during times of pestilence and pandemics throughout the church's history, the church has practiced, this what we could now call social distancing. Martin Luther had written about this in times of pestilence, and what his advice to the church was, and the advice that he would follow. Richard Baxter, the famous pastor from Europe, had also written about this, and that it was, acceptable for the church to sort of pause for the sake of, loving your neighbor and so forth, periodically during times of calamity and so forth. And I think there are probably many other examples too. But I think, I think if this were to go long term, as some people are talking about, the church would sort of have to reconsider its position. That it certainly cannot be considered the gathering of the body of Christ cannot be considered a non-essential activity, as it were. I think that's, I think it's a question of, is the church, how do we conceive of the church? Do we conceive of the church as just sort of another social imaginary, that can be configured in a lot of different ways, or is the church really, the local church really something concrete, So I just think that's something that the leaders of the church are going to have to, really sit down and reconfigure what their views are on this, and if it goes long term.
I think one of the triumphs of the church in history, whether it understands it or not, or whether it supports this stuff or not, is the idea that the human person was sacred, and that you have a limited use of the bludgeon of society against that person, including those who wish to worship. And I think this is a scary moment where a lot of folks who have a lot of grudges against a vital church, a church that's muscular and politically conscious, are very excited at how quickly they could get churches to shut their mouths and shut their services up by force. I have no problem with churches voluntarily saying, you know what, folks, we got a lot of elderly people. We're going to go ahead and separate voluntarily. But the idea of just, in a land of the free, just surrendering that and just saying, okay, by force, as some governors have done, saying if you see people gathering, you go ahead and tell us. And I think Cuomo said, well, we can shut them down permanently if we have to. I mean, they're licking their lips at the symbolic and profound power this may give them culturally,
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to be very careful here, because we're sort of in uncharted territory in that regard. Not only with the church, but with industry and many other things where the government has taken an opportunity to seize power, and really, the legal test has not really been met for them to do that in many ways, I think. So it's something where the church has to really be careful here because, it's a matter of, who gets to make these determinations? Is it the state, which has the authority and the power to use coercion and force, or as you said, is it a voluntary thing that the church is doing right now? And there's a fine line there that I think we haven't quite negotiated yet. Right. I think it's something that we need to really think about and wrestle with in our country and not be so flippant. I saw the headlines where they had people sitting in their apartments just howling out at the window. They do it as a ritual together. And I just think, what is this dehumanization of society where people just yelp it to the mirror? I mean, I understand not to read too much into it, but I just find it very disgusting on a symbolic level. People just sitting all cooped up in their little apartments, just basically complying with a novel theory for how to deal with a pandemic. It hasn't even been proven that flattening the curve is actually the best way to limit deaths. And I'm against death, and I think we all should be as Christians. We'll continue to unpack this with Pastor Jim Fitzgerald on the other side as we think about Good Friday and what are the good things we can do. Let's continue.
Hi, I'm Cheryl. Welcome to Fountain View Estates, one of Tampa's premier manufactured home retirement communities. We feature 2 resort-style swimming pools, large 16-person jacuzzi, pickleball courts, a ballroom, clubs, classes, and a dog park. You'll be just minutes away from the West Chase area, outstanding golf, great shopping, dining, arts, and entertainment. Fountain View Estates offers several new homes under $120,000 with large open floor plans, designer color schemes, fine wood cabinets, updated appliances, and modern flooring. With any new home purchase, you'll receive 6 months free lifestyle fees as well as 3.99% financing. Visit us at 8800 Berkshire Lane, just south of Linebaugh Avenue off Sheldon Road. Call 844-515-3903 or Google Fountain View Estates to book a tour online. Come discover what our residents already know. There's a fountain of youth at Fountain View Estates.
Our friends at Liquid Addiction Hydrographics and Paint are on the air reminding all motorists to save the text message for when it's not going to cause an accident. This safe driving tip brought by Liquid Addiction Hydrographics and Paint, your #1 ABD most trusted motorcycle repair and auto customization experts. Give the pros a call today at 7273-756653, 7273-756653. That's Liquid Addiction Hydrographics and Paint.
The following message is sponsored by the Florida Department of Elder Affairs, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this radio station.
Sarah is 64 and loves to garden. Recently, her health insurance ran out, leaving her worried about more than just weeds. She called the Elder Helpline and spoke with a volunteer Shine counselor about her options. There, she received free, unbiased counseling on health insurance for those on Medicare. For more information or to volunteer, call 1-800 888-963-5337 or go to floridashine.org.
Windshields are all about safety, and so is Auto Glass America, especially now during the COVID-19 pandemic and social distancing. If your windshield is chipped or cracked and you have qualifying insurance, we'll install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. As always, we'll come to you with free mobile service while maintaining social distancing, plus you'll get up to $150 cash back for your windshield. Keep your family safe. Call us today, 813-96-GLASS. That's 813-96-GLASS.
It's been called shell shock, war neurosis, and battle fatigue. Today, we call it post-traumatic stress disorder, and it affects 1 out of every 5 warriors returning from battle in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Wounded Warrior Project offers comfort and support for warriors with PTSD and all other scars of war, whether those scars are visible or hidden. Find out how to help, because for warriors, the greatest casualty is being forgotten. Please visit woundedwarriorproject.org.
We are live on A Neighbor's Choice across Central Florida. We are live and we're having a great time reflecting on Good Friday. Good Friday, where Jesus said, "It is finished." Well, what was finished? Well, hopefully it's not us, right? We're not finished. We got a lot of work to do. So what should we be doing on Good Friday? What should we be doing 2,000 years after this moment that we mark our time by? To understand this and reflect on that, we have my good friend and founder of Equipping Pastors International, Pastor Jim Fitzgerald. You know, Jim, I think that, going back to that point about people howling at the moon, I think, I guess they're trying to get their anxiety out or something, but there's something sacred about humanity that I think we're in danger of losing when we have these folks coming up, folks like Bill Gates saying we all need to have a digital ticket and a digital certificate, get a little vaccine, just sit our mouths and shut our mouths and sit down and be good little puppies. And Dr. Fauci saying, maybe an idea, we need to have some kind of certificate of immunization like animals. I mean, this is so, something from the old world. I'll just put it that way, the old order of things. Let's just try to, to put a light on it. It's something that I think the Prince of the Air would be very happy with, this the way we're just sitting here taking this stuff.
Yeah, well, it's dehumanizing in many ways, it would certainly be something that would have a very large effect on, for instance, things like what I do. In terms of the mission of the church, if you could imagine, all the places that I travel to, and then suddenly, if I didn't have the antibodies, and if there weren't any, vaccines for it at some point in time here, I could potentially be forbidden to travel, potentially forbidden to do the work that I do. Yes, there are already, vaccination cards and things like that in the system that when you go to some countries you have to show. But, adding to that just puts another layer, as it were, of this sort of bureaucracy that would prohibit the gospel work that many of us are doing.
Yeah, and I think that the idea that we would just so quickly say, you know what, we'll stay at home until government says we're allowed to come out. Can't go to church, can't have gatherings together. Isn't that what the early church was being persecuted about? They're getting together and they're celebrating, they're telling the truth about what they believe, and they were rounded up into dungeons. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening now, but what I am saying is, what's the legal precedent for that kind of thing to be happening if we just sit here and allow folks to say, you are not going to worship or else. Now, I think it's not as bad as in Florida. I think Florida, DeSantis has said, or I think he's made some leeway saying we'd rather you not meet, but we're going to not make a statewide policy about, whether church is essential services or not. But again, they're acting like this is some kind of gospel decree that this is the way to save lives when they don't know that. These are people who are acting like gods. There's a lot of folks, Dr. Witowski from the Rockefeller University, he's retired there. He's a very renowned epidemiologist who says this flattening the curve business could result in more deaths of elderly folks than if we had just let the herd immunity take its course. So they're using a very controversial theory about how to deal with a virus, and then they're flattening and stomping out every bit of rights that I thought were given to us by God, not them. So I don't know. This is a very disturbing thing for me. I understand voluntarily quarantining, but this idea that just took a few weeks to get America to just all sit down like Pavlov's dogs is very disturbing to me.
Well, the fear factor and the panic that was created, I think, largely by the media, coverage and reaction, had a tremendous impact on people's behavior. But I like to say, one of the things that I've been sort of thinking about is that, how much we don't know. And when I say we, I mean how much the experts don't know, the so-called experts. There seems to be a total lack of healthy agnosticism about these things. We used to call things like this acts of God, because we didn't understand them. And the more I hear people talk about this, especially the experts, is just sort of relearning how much they don't know. And then the other thing is that there seems, because of that, because they don't have this sort of healthy agnosticism, there seems to be a total lack of humility about approaching this kind of a subject, this kind of pestilence, calamity. And the other thing is that people keep talking about data this, data that, it's a data-driven thing. And I think, we've gotten to the point, this sort of Enlightenment, modernistic concept that data interprets itself. Like data is the end of the story. And, that's the thing about it, is data doesn't interpret itself. Data needs to be interpreted. And in order to interpret data, properly and correctly and carefully, it requires a hermeneutic. That means that it requires a method of interpretation. And what you see by the different things that you've just said is you see multiple schools of interpretation of the same data, right? So these people are using different hermeneutics, as it were, different methods of interpretation. And that's the thing always about science. Science is not a god. Science has huge limitations. There's a lot we don't know. What we don't know requires a certain amount of humility. And we have to understand that data doesn't interpret itself, that it requires a hermeneutic. All that says is that models, science, all these things have real limitations. They're incapable of explaining all reality, and so we start looking and what that means. We're trying to interpret probability. We're looking at the data, we're looking at the numbers, and then we're trying to look at, the probability of what might occur. How many people will be hospitalized, how many deaths will there be, and so forth. And we forget that these are just probabilities. And what we've seen is that the probabilities, projections about the probabilities have been way off, way inflated. And then we've allowed ourselves to be, kept in our homes or kept out of work, kept out of the church, based on probability that was using the wrong hermeneutic to reach the wrong conclusions, and then develop policies around that affect people's lives. many more lives could be lost as a result of that wrong hermeneutic. So I think that's just, one of the things. And, we used to talk about these things in terms of providence. This is the providence of God. What is God trying to say to us? And then how do we as the people of God respond to that providence? Now providence is a tricky thing too. You can't, providence is not an easy thing to read as well. But those, that when you come to a situation, a calamity, a pestilence, or anything like this, and you come to it with humility, and you seek God and you say, what's happening? What is it that we need to do? And I think that's where we've made a God out of government and out of science, and we're seeing where that goes.
And isn't it interesting that whenever we try to play God and use certain statistics or data, interpretations of them to map out the destinies of people through central planning, it always requires sacrifice. It always requires coercion to play God. And it's interesting because Jesus says, in reflection of Good Friday, Jesus says, go and learn what this means. God desires mercy, not sacrifice. And what America says in response is, no, excuse me, we'll take sacrifice just fine, but we'll make it seem like it's mercy. We'll sacrifice you with police action if you're playing Frisbee in the park. We'll sacrifice you if you're at church. We'll sacrifice you if you're from the wrong country. We'll sacrifice you if you speak the wrong language and say the virus the wrong name. We'll sacrifice you all day long, ladies and gentlemen, because we're God and we know how to map this thing out. And humans, being idolatrous, we say, most of us, okay, I guess we'll go along with you. Yeah, Jesus, I'll keep him in my back pocket. I can't wait to go to church 5 months from now. Thank you. Give me a break. Who's the king of this world? Right. Who's the king?
Yeah, well, Patrick Deneen, who wrote a book called Why Liberalism Fails, and he's talking here about classical liberalism, not just the right or the left. He's talking about the whole program, the whole project of classical liberalism. He made the statement that, one of the flaws in liberalism, in addition to its faulty anthropology, that is, its answer to the question of what is a human being, is that it always needs a crisis. Liberalism always needs a crisis. And if it doesn't have a crisis, it has to invent one. And then its responses to that crisis are always increasingly more totalitarian as they go along. And then you end up losing the liberalism, that you had. So, or the liberty that you had. So it's, that's sort of an inherent flaw in our system. And this is another example of it. And then, we saw the same thing in 9/11, and that reaction to 9/11, where we have the surveillance state that comes in, and this, and the corporate surveillance, and now we're talking about another kind of, surveillance of the virus, where they use that to track individuals and human beings.
We're talking with Pastor Jim Fitzgerald on Good Friday. We're going to unpack what resurrection means in times of fear and times of despair, and what that means for how we should act. We'll be right back.
Guys, the physicians and staff at Center for Men's Health want you to know that C4MH.com is open and will remain open throughout this whole ordeal. C4MH.com has taken a multitude of steps to make sure that their offices are the safest places that they can possibly be. And here are just a few of the items that make that statement a fact. C4MH.com treats all offices with Microban 24. Now, that's the most advanced antivirus disinfectant available today. And unlike any other disinfectant, Microban 24 kills viruses for 24 hours after application, touch after touch. The staff wears level 1 procedure mask, and you can have one too. They also monitor their temperatures, and soon they'll do the same for you when you walk in the door. All their pens and clipboards are antimicrobial, and when you walk in, you will use hand sanitizer. cancer. C4MH.com prepared for this early so that both their staff and patients remain safe. Safe is the way it's always been at C4MH. I'm a patient at C4MH.com, and I know safety is their first concern.
Right now, we're going through some challenging times. People are looking at different ways they can reinvent their business. I've been in the digital marketing industry for 20 years. If you think it's a good time to do an audit on your website or have a conversation about your digital marketing strategy, simply just email me, Jeff@chiefinternetmarketer.com. Jeff@chiefinternetmarketer.com. We can do this right from the safety of our own homes through a video conference. Again, just simply email me, Jeff@chiefinternetmarketer.com for your free consultation. Stay safe, be vigilant, we will persevere.
New guidelines show it's relatively safe for women with epilepsy to become pregnant, but caution must be taken. The guidelines from the American Academy of Neurology and American Epilepsy Society recommend that women with epilepsy avoid taking the seizure drug valproate during pregnancy, since the drug can cause birth defects. Overall, though, these guidelines should be very reassuring since they show epilepsy does not substantially increase a woman's risk of having a cesarean section or premature labor. For more information on these guidelines, visit thebrainmatters.org.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. We're live on 1040 a.m. in Tampa Bay. Go ahead and set the preset button to always have this station in mind from 4 to 6 every weekday, Monday through Friday. Or if you're in Orlando, 540 a.m. and 93.1 FM. And everywhere in between. Between those two stations, we've got the full I-4 corridor covered. And then also online, join us on our Facebook stream, or just search David Gornoski on YouTube and join us there for the video stream. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. We've been covering a lot of topics. We've been doing a lot of breaking research with folks trying to work on the front lines to solve the coronavirus with some interesting potentials with things like Z-Pak and doxycycline right under our noses being the potential thing that could help us. But I'm talking with Pastor Jim Fitzgerald now as we take a moment to reflect on Good Friday. And Pastor Jim, I wanted to ask you, I think about, they always say in times of, these scary moments or different moments, they're always talking about, we are united, we are united, we are united. All the political leaders love saying that. But Jesus says in Matthew, Chapter 10:34, do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. And I think about that, and I think, well, it sounds like America. It sounds like maybe that's coming to pass. We can't agree on who the villains are. If you went back, a few hundred years ago and there was a plague, they would blame it on a minority group. Maybe it was the Jews. They poisoned the water, or maybe it was another group or it was the witches. We need to burn them. Or if you went back thousands of years ago, it would be even more unified in being able to say, okay, we know what caused this. The gods are angry. They demand sacrifice. They wouldn't even know what the concept of mercy is from a God's perspective. And they would know that from the thousands of years ago, those perspectives would be, hey, we need unity. And we feel unified in our belief that this person deserves to die for the blessings and the health of the many. And I think that kind of is something that Jesus is disrupting here in this passage. He's talking about he's going to divide people. And I don't think that means that his end goal is division, but rather when we unify around agreeing to blame someone else for our problems, Jesus, you bet, is going to disrupt that.
Yeah. Right. So I'm, in that way, I'm always a little leery, about the distinction that Rene Girard makes between differentiation and sameness. Sameness is what scares me when people all start, saying the same things and doing all the same things. That actually is what scares me. And then they sort of pick out a scapegoat for, what the cause of all this is. But yeah, Jesus did come to disrupt that, and he did disrupt it, and he is the anti-myth in that regard. Christ came, he lived the perfect life for us. That's what we call his act of obedience. He kept the law. He kept it personally and perfectly as the second and final Adam, as the first Adam was unable to do. And he paid the ultimate price for our sins. He was the sacrifice for our sins. He died on the cross for us in our place, in behalf of us. And in that way, he saved us. So he fulfilled the law. He defeated Satan, took the wrath and justice of God upon himself. Those are the things that Good Friday is all about. And he conquered Satan, he conquered death, he conquered disease. Now the problem is that people often think that some parts of the church think that all happens at once. That disease is already is already gone. It's just a matter of believing enough, and then you don't get sick. But what you need to understand is that the kingdom of God comes in stages. So it begins with the coming of Jesus in the flesh. God comes in the flesh. And that's the beginning of the kingdom of God. That's the inauguration of the kingdom. Jesus comes, he suffers, he dies, he's buried. That's what Holy Week is all about. That's what Good Friday and Holy Saturday are all about. And then he rises again. That's what Easter Sunday is about. And then he ascends into heaven. He's seated at the right hand of the throne of God. That means that he's the King. He is Lord. And of course, that's what Pilate said in John 19, right? He wrote, "This is the King of the Jews." And the Jews said, "No, right? He said he was the King of Jews." And Pilate said, "No, well, this is what I've written." And he wrote it in Aramaic and Latin and Greek, which means this is international. He's more than just the King of the Jews. He's the King of the world. He is Lord of all. He's the King of kings and the Lord of lords. And embedded in all of that, in this idea of kingship and lordship, are three things. And one is that he has complete authority. There's nothing outside the realm of Christ's authority. The second, that is, he has the absolutely right to do and dispose of whatever he wants, according to the counsel of his own goodwill. The second thing is that he has absolute control. That is, he not only has the authority to do something, but he has the power to do it. And there's nothing outside of the scope of his power. But the third thing is that's often underemphasized is his presence with us. And that means, the incarnation of Christ means that he came, he suffered, and he understands. He's with us. He's with us personally. So he ascends. He sends his Spirit to be with us, and he promises to come again in power and glory and rule and reign on the earth. So those represent three different stages. The kingdom has come, right, in the person of Jesus Christ. The kingdom is here by the presence of the Holy Spirit, and the kingdom will come finally and fully. So yet in this in-between time, we still have death and disease, and that's what we're facing now. The good news is we're not looking for some kind of escapism. Christianity isn't about escapism. It isn't about being taken out of this trial, this pestilence, but it's about knowing that whatever we go through, that Christ is with us, right? That's what Emmanuel means, God with us. Christ is with us. And so we're not going through this alone. We're isolated in our homes, maybe, no matter who put us there, whether it's our own volition or whether it's the government, we are never alone. Christ is with us. God is with us. The Holy Spirit is with us. And
what
so
does that
no matter
mean?
what does that mean? Never facing this alone.
What does that mean? He's with us. He feels our pain. He kind of sees that. Oh, I understand. You feel bad. I could feel that way too. What does that mean? He's with us in those moments.
Well, yeah. I mean, certainly, the incarnation tells us all of those things. Jesus hungered, thirst. He suffered. He felt pain. And he felt. Let's remember, he was tempted by Satan himself, which probably none of us have ever experienced. He felt the full depth and the full brunt of the maximum amount of temptation that Satan can inflict upon a human being, and he was victorious over it, and he was victorious over death, so he has complete understanding. There's no part of he knows more about our humanity than we know about himself, because he was fully human. We're becoming more fully human, But Jesus was fully human. He understood, and he was also fully God. So he understands the full depth of our humanity in a way that we can't even fathom. He certainly is with us in that sense. But he's also present with us through the Holy Spirit. Jesus said, if I go away, I'll send the Comforter to you. And so he sent his Spirit here. And so we have the Holy Spirit. So he's with us. He's in our hearts, and we're in him. He's in us. We have union with Christ by virtue of that. And so we're never really and truly by ourselves.
We're talking about Good Friday with Pastor Jim Fitzgerald, who's with Equipping Pastors International. And we're talking about what this event in history means right now in our lives today. I'm David Gornoski. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. Back in a minute.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. Ouch! Well, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers. Here's what our customers had to say.
Painless. No more pricking my finger.
No finger pricks.
Convenience. They delivered it free, and they took care of all the paperwork.
If you're testing your blood sugar 4 or more times per day, injecting insulin 3 or more times per day, or using an insulin pump, a CGM can help you. It's accurate, easy to use, and if you have Medicare, you can get a new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. Plus, get free shipping of your new CGM, and we can bill Medicare for you.
Honestly, I had my doubts, but that new CGM is painless.
Call now. 808-5181. 800-808-5181. That's 800-808-5181.
So you've decided to jump into the world of media with a podcast. How's that working? Hopefully well. But if you're only seeing a handful of downloads, then it's time to air your podcast on radio to give it the reach it deserves. Thousands will hear it, not just a few. Call today to find out more how we can bring an audience to your podcast on this station. 813-250-3883. That's 813-250-3883. Or email to info@unitedcitiespro.com. That's info@unitedcitiespro.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Lang, board-certified optometric physician and certified nutritional specialist, host of popular talk show Ask the Doctor. I've researched and developed an amazing new omega-3 product that you'll see incredible results with. It's called Fortify Super Omega-3 Max. I had one of the top Norwegian omega-3 research teams in conjunction with myself and Fortify Vitamins aid in the development of this advanced omega-3. This product is the most potent and purest triglyceride form omega-3 in the United States today. Omega-3 is great for all aspects of your health and well-being, especially in this unprecedented, challenging time. I am giving a 25% discount with promo code RADIO during this viral pandemic. Go to my website, fortify.com. That's FORTIFEYE. Remember the EYE in Fortify. That's fortify.com, Enter the promo code RADIO to receive the 25% discount.
The following message is sponsored by the Florida Department of Elder Affairs, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this radio station.
Have you ever given your Social Security number to someone without knowing why they need it? Has your Medicare card been stolen? If you think you've been a victim of Medicare fraud, contact the SHINE Senior Medicare Patrol Program. They empower seniors to prevent Medicare fraud and can help if you've been a victim. To speak to a SHINE counselor, call 1-800-963-5337 or go to floridashine.org.
My name is Roz. Most people know me as a spokesperson for 1-800-ASK-GARY. The driver made a left turn onto ongoing traffic and I hit her. Once I got out of my vehicle and I was able to stand up, then I started feeling pain elsewhere. I had to think. Call 1-800-ASK-GARY. They were on the ball, helping me find legal and medical help. They have thousands of other people, but they make you feel like you're their top priority. I made the call. I now tell other people to make.
Non-attorney spokesperson.
My part-time service in the Army National Guard makes it possible for me to be more for the community I call home. I'm a better neighbor because my service has taught me how important it is to be a team player. My training helps me in my classes when I give attention to detail to the task at hand. My service in the Army National Guard allows me to keep my country safe from threats. Learn more about how you too can live and serve part-time by visiting nationalguard.com.
Sponsored by the Florida Army National Guard. Aired by the Florida Association of Broadcasters and this station.
So Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their superiors exercise authority over them. But it shall not be this way among you. Instead, whoever wants to become a great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be the slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." It's the words of Jesus' Gospel of Mark. We're here with Pastor Jim Fitzgerald on this Good Friday, and I can't help but think in a nation with 70% or so of us saying that we're Christian, and most of our elected leaders are probably identifying as Christian, how come those words ring so hollow for their witness and our witness? It's not just making our leaders, but how come that's so superfluous for our everyday lives? I mean, I don't know what the asterisk here is when he says you're not to rule over and lord over people like they do in the other kingdoms. I mean, where's the asterisk that says in case there's a virus and you have a novel theory about how to do this, and in case you need to stop them going to church and playing Frisbee and wash hands or do this drug, or you can't take that drug, or we'll ban this drug. I see a lot of lording over by people who go to church. What's going on? How come this doesn't take, Jim, Pastor Jim?
Right. Well, yeah. So, I mean, there's probably a lot of reasons why, but we're certainly far away from, the idea of servant leadership, the idea of the public servant. I think those who have been in government for a long time, I think, a lot of people come into government optimistic about, service to their country. But I think, it doesn't take long for that to wear off, and the machine takes over. I think that there are so many flaws in that. But I think, the biggest one is that, is the biggest question from the point of view of the Bible and from Christianity and the church is, are we living as followers of Christ? And I think too often we're not, that needs to be the number one thing about all of our lives, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, and in our country, our state, our government, are we living as followers of Christ? And we don't get to make Christ in our own image. That's not an option that we have. We're to be remade in His image. We are new creations in Christ Jesus. And so, I think, we are in, and we have been for quite some time in this country. We've been in a rather strange place with regard to the kinds of Christianity that we practice. So, right now I see a couple of different factors, and they probably all have the same source, unfortunately, namely that, we should just hunker down, stay in our homes, and do what people say. The other is we need to get right back to business as usual. And, I think that, both of those things are relying on the same method to make those conclusions. That is, they're looking at data and saying, and they're looking at science, and they're listening to the physicians and the doctors and the experts and making those same conclusions. What I would hope and pray for is that we would have a chance to actually remake something here in terms of the church and in terms of how we live our lives, and a return to the idea of place and locality and community, communion, and that would affect how we do everything. But I'm afraid that's probably not going to happen. I think one of those two paths that we just mentioned are probably going to be the case. We're either going to get back to business as usual, and this will be put behind us as if it never happened, or we're going to have the residual effect of this quarantine lingering on with us for a while. Neither one of those things are actually going to bring us closer to being true followers of Jesus.
Right.
I'm afraid.
Rodney Stark, the sociologist, in his book, The Triumph of Christianity, notes that perhaps one of the reasons why the early church spread so fast was that during the plague in the Roman Empire, they were on the first and probably the only folks who went towards those who were in terrible conditions because of the pestilence and ministered to them and fed them and clothed them and gave them water and gave them mercy, as opposed to the world around them was just giving them sacrifice. And I think maybe that's something that we should think about, during this Holy Weekend, the Good Friday and Resurrection, is this notion that we're all afraid of death, but if death is conquered, why should we be afraid of death?
Right.
And
right. Yeah. And I think that's a good point. I did read that article. I think I think that's right on. And we might do well to highlight some folks that are doing that. And, there are many Christian doctors and nurses and healthcare providers that are doing that for sure. There are ministries that are doing that, such as Samaritan's Purse, and I'm sure there are others, who went, who drove into the battle, as it were, flew into the battle and set up hospitals and so forth to minister to people in need. So that is happening, albeit, probably on all too small. I think, the thing about this is that, we have, things are largely so good for us that, and we think this kind of thing, will never happen and should never happen to us. And so when it does, we're caught off guard and prepared to act like, Christ would have us to act. And and then the fear takes over, and the panic and the withdrawal. And so, I think that, it should be a wake-up call for us in many ways, It should be a moment of epiphany. We have had, in some ways, the way I've been thinking about this is, we're in the season of Lent, Lent is a time of reflection and repentance and looking forward to the hope of the resurrection, preparing our hearts for that moment. And the Western Church has not been very good at that. I think Pope John Paul II said, Westerners and Americans in particular are great at new beginnings, but we're not very good at living with stuff, And I think, we love Easter, but we don't like Lent very much. We don't like repentance very much. We don't like reflection very much. I think, it was Pascal that said, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And I think that's what people are struggling with right now. We have an inability to do that, and we shouldn't, And so, I think that, Lent, we've had this Lent imposed upon us, ironically, not by the church, but by the state. And so now we have to learn how to be, how to live in the monastery, as it were. And we would do well to read some of those monastic practices of reading scripture and praying and reading the Psalms, meditation, reading other classic works and so forth. We would do very well to go back and look at the rules of the monastery and learn how it is to live in solitude, and then use that to shape and form our lives liturgically, as it were, in order to go out then into the world and live like Christ. So whenever this happens, and it will happen again, that the church will look like the church is supposed to look. Because right now, I'm afraid it doesn't.
Very good, Pastor Jim Fitzgerald. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise, David. I appreciate it. And congratulations on your show expanding out to these different territories here in Florida and around the world.
Thank you, and happy Good Friday to everyone. This is A Neighbor's Choice. I'm signing off. David Gornoski here. Godspeed.
Let's take this to another level.
Your home for fantasy, sports, and information. WHBO, Dallas Park, Tampa Bay Sports Talk 1040. The Team, powered by Sports Talk Florida.